my name is Russell Anderson. I'm CEO of the NEMBC, and Joe Pratt's here with us, who's the General Manager of 4EB radio station. And of course, we're here to talk about the coronavirus and the speed at which things are happening. I myself have just got out of quarantine for 4 days, so I'm glad to be back in the office, so I can talk from a sort of personal experience about what it's like to be in lockup for 4 days at home. And certainly that's very interesting about, it's not just a weekend. You do feel like you're locked up. You do feel like you're enclosed. And I've learned a lot about that, about routines and of children. So it's how to set a schedule and how to do those sorts of things. But we can talk about that later, because that's one thing I think that we could be doing as broadcasters, talking to people that are in that situation, in their languages, and having that more personal connection with people. It's a way of producing content around that. Maybe we can have this will hopefully be an ongoing discussion. It's not just a one-off. We're pretty much just starting now. And whatever people sort of chat or talk about or want to have discussions about, we can have another conversation about that. So please feel free to write things down below. Now, I always find the one-way system quite interesting because it's us talking to you. So as Mikaela said from the CMTO, if you want to actually speak and not write something down, just say so in the chat or hit the raise your hand, and Mikaela will open up and you can speak and have a conversation rather than just be us talking to you. So certainly would welcome that from everybody at any time you'd like to say something.
And I've just made a note there, like it'd be great to know what stations people are from as well.
Yeah, that one-way street, we don't know where you're from, if you're broadcasters or managers. So maybe you could just quickly write into the information below where you're from, and let us know so that we know who we're talking to, managers or broadcasters. So, as I said, we won't go into the details about the basics of distancing and hand washing and sterilising your station. There's been a lot of information about that already, and certainly your station should have been practicing that. We really have got to the next level where stations are now asking people, 4EB and 5EBI have asked people to stay away if they're over 60, because the full-time stations and even the ethnic broadcasters at other stations are high risk, because full-time ethnic stations have a lot of people moving in and out of the station, and they're also stations where people have been travelling a lot. So there's people been moving around, and we've also got seniors as well.
Yeah. Generally, we sort of find that most of our demographic are in that high-risk category as well. So from a duty of care perspective, we've sort of taken a number of measures which have slowly escalated over the last week in terms of how we look after all of our volunteers, including broadcasters and committee members and paid staff. So I don't know whether you want me to talk a little bit about that,
Yep.
Russell.
Yep, that'd be good. We can talk about what you're doing at your station. Yep, that high level thing. Yep.
Yeah. So I think, to start with, we implemented the whole hand washing, Glen 20, changing microphone socks over between broadcasters, encouraging everyone to use their own headphones, that sort of thing. Then as the situation seemed to get a little bit worse, we then sent out a letter strongly recommending, and I rang all of these broadcasters in the 80 plus range, stay away from the station. And then that sort of escalated to include anyone over the age of 60. And that's more for the health and safety of those individuals. But as you know, we've been obviously in touch with other stations and looking at what other people are doing. Having, still maybe 400 people in and out of this building a week is not a good thing to do right now. So we're about to move from Saturday lunchtime to a fully, we're actually locking the building to, sorry, anyone who, I haven't actually sent this email out yet. So anyone from 4EB that's listening, here's the latest update. We're actually going to be locking the building to all volunteers, so all broadcasters. We've my tech team have been working like so seriously and diligently since Monday to come up with a number of solutions in terms of how we support broadcasters. Some are set up to pre-record at home, that's fine. A lot aren't. And so we have a number of strategies, which I'm also happy to share, like the software and different things we're recommending. I'm happy to do that. I'm sure CMTO can figure out how that could happen. And so we're doing that. But the key thing, obviously, as community broadcasters is that we have a responsibility to ensure that our communities are getting this information, that are staying up to date with what's happening, and they have a right to hear that news in their own language the way they would expect to on a normal week. And so we're working on a few strategies to make sure that happens. We'll have some in English news that we don't normally program that will go into programs. There's a bunch of community service announcements that are available through CBAA. And we're working on creating a suite of 52 different language community service announcements with the help of state government here, which we're also happy to make available to anyone who would like to use that. And that'll be just generic, not time-sensitive information about corona, social distancing, and where you find out more information. But it's going to be critical, as we go to a different model of broadcasting. Don't know how it's going to work, but as we go to a different model of broadcasting, how then we support both our broadcasters to continue to have a presence on air and to talk to their communities, and that we make sure that accurate information is getting out, and not I heard this and this is what I think you can do to stop coronavirus. It's not true. So so that information needs to come from a reliable source.
It's good to know we've got Radio Italiana there from Adelaide, Mario and Annette from Cairns FM. That's good. Hi. I think that's the next level that we are working towards, is how do these people now broadcast get their information into the station? Do they record it at home on a USB and drive into the car park and drop it into the station? Joe, how do they do that?
We have a few different options that we're going to give, because some of our broadcasters just don't even have the capacity to pre-record at home. And so one of the things that we'll be offering to a limited number of broadcasters is for them to phone in, and for our production staff. And I mean, we're in a lucky position that we do have a full-time tech, so that they're able to actually record the people talking, and then they just have the flexibility to let us choose the music and drop it into their programs. And so we'll be doing a lot of producing programs more than we ever would. Like, we don't normally get involved in that as a station, but that's one of the things. We do have some software links, which I'll just find them and I'll stick them in the messaging there, where people can download some software, which means they can then upload their program to that particular software. Then we access it and we schedule it from here. We'll drop in community announcements, like community service announcements, and any sponsorship that has to go in. And then otherwise it's the usual email and MP3. But we are not encouraging people to come drop stuff in, obviously, because we want to keep people away as much as possible.
So with the phone in, you'll be having people, they'll phone in and they'll be the interviewer, they'll have interviewee set up, and you'll run it through the panel. Your technician will run it through the panel and record it from like 2 phone lines coming in. Yep.
Or it might just be the broadcaster talking, like saying whatever their script was going to be for the program that they were going to do. Well, so it's going to put a lot of pressure. Like, I think these are the things, like, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the station over the net. And we're looking at implementing this for a 2-month period. So initially, and quite aware that this is actually going to put a lot of pressure on the station. The other thing that people, so we get the, and any of the ethnic stations and ethnic programs may also have this access to CBF funding, so the ethnic special programming funding. from last year, so this current financial year that we're in. So I did talk to CBF about the flexibility to perhaps redirect something that might have been for marketing and promotional material towards equipment, so that we could buy microphones to supply broadcasters so that they can plug in and do a bit of higher quality reporting at home. And they were very open and very flexible to that. So CBF have been fantastic, and CBAA have also been fantastic in terms of bringing up with stupid questions. So
I can tell you from a sector perspective as well. So just had a meeting of the peak bodies, and there is conversations happening with the CPF. There's one next Wednesday. I'm not sure if I'll join it, but it is around those sort of questions, whether the CBF, how flexible the CBF is to redirecting some of the money that that people have got into the crisis that we're facing now. And probably by mid next week there'll be a statement made about that, I hope, so that it can free up the money that you've got that is dedicated for certain things into this crisis that you've got. So, and certainly the same question is, the applications have just been into the CBF. So, 3 weeks ago, if we would have we've written this application just a week ago or 2 weeks ago now. If we're writing the application now, it'd be a very different application we'd be writing to the CBF around that crisis. So we need that flexibility. And if you're doing something like that, Joe, then one of the flexibilities would be to allow for more technicians into your station, because they're going to have to be rotating if they're doing a lot of these interviews, and need backup if your technician gets sick, and other stations might not have technicians to do that sort of phone-in calling. So maybe that's something to identify. One of the needs we have is more technicians involved in the station, less movement of people and more technicians working. Yeah. So how will other people be recording? They'll just be at home recording. They've got the facilities at home to pre-record and send in information. What percentage of those have that capability and are set up for that of all your presenters? 20%, 30%, 50% of them?
maybe I'd say 30 to 40.
30 to 40%.
Yeah, 30 to 40% do, and probably another 10 to 20 will be okay, and won't find this too challenging. But I guess, yeah, we're already aware that and I've been on the phone all week, as have production staff all week, because we've been hinting that this is coming. So we've been talking to everyone about what the capacity of their group is, whether it means that, you might have 3 or 4 programs that are done by different people in the one language group, whether they need to then rely on one person who does have the capacity. And worst case scenario, which I probably won't put in the letter that's going out today, is that if we need to, we will schedule very tightly for people to come in, so that we can monitor the amount of people that are in the building at any one time. So, and also monitor cleaning the gear and, after people leave and all that sort of stuff. So, to be honest, yeah, we have no idea how or if this is going to work.
So Robert asked, I'd love to know what automated software your team and others are using. So that is the big question, isn't it? And I think CMTO has got some ideas on.
So we use Audacity to record and put together programs. And this is probably so not a me question.
I might just interject here. So really great timing. The CMTO, we've just posted up on our website a quick guide to recording your show at home. So we've just posted this article now. It's a few helpful tips. I'm just going to post it in the chat box here, but I'll just give a quick rundown. So basically we've listed the equipment you'll need is a laptop, external hard drive or something to keep the files off your computer, portable device, so whether that's a mobile phone or a voice recorder, and the sound editing software we have here is Audacity, which is the free version, and then Hindenburg, where you can also have a 30-day free trial.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah, so we've just popped that in the chat. I just popped that in the chat box here for everyone to have a look at when you get a spare moment.
We also use FileZilla to upload.
That's fantastic. We also have just a few useful links and stuff there. So when you get the chance, go have a gaze, go have a look.
What about so once you've produced your program at home, what's your delivery method from home into the station, or what do you suggest, CMTO?
So we have a couple of things. We're recommending people download and install FileZilla, which means that they can upload it directly. So we're a host for that. So they have access using their own 4EB username and password. And then the other option, of course, is to email it directly to production@4EB, or use Google Drive, Dropbox, and OneDrive. We're giving people as many options as we can. So
you have a Dropbox as well, which could get very full. And the FileZilla is like a fast transfer protocol, so it just goes through the internet to you. Yeah, so it doesn't use up files like a Dropbox. Yep.
No. So it's people using their own and just sharing it with us. Once we pull it off, we delete it anyway, once it goes into our system. So it's less of an issue, the size.
Yep. Okay. Okay, I'll just look for other questions that might be there. A few people using that PC to access your PC's load recorded shows. Okay, we've got people saying a few things. We use FileZilla. Joe says. All right. So the content. So could you tell us a little bit about how they might be producing content for their programs then from home? Is it?
I think already this week we've moved to phone interviews. So rather than and you can use your iPhone, you can use Skype apparently as good audio, but phone interviews. Rather than face-to-face. We have some broadcasters who are a little bit more set up tech-wise and a bit more tech-savvy, who are working with a couple of our individual program producers to assist them. And some people are getting together in their homes and doing their programs together, but otherwise, the news is readily available. Just go to the right sites, not the wrong ones. So you can still do that. Most people have their own, music files to add. So I don't think anything changes except your location, really, and obviously the gear that you're using. But avoiding, the whole social distancing thing, avoiding that face-to-face contact if you can. I know it feels extreme. The whole thing to me feels very extreme, but it is what we've got to do.
So do you imagine from your 30 or 40% of people that are already can do it from home, and then you've got other people that can phoning in, do you imagine there'll be drop off, that people that just won't be able to do the programs?
We'll struggle with a couple of the bigger groups particularly that don't do pre-recorded programs at all currently. So all of our, we have a policy here that everyone has to have a standby program or two anyway on file. So that's ready in case you just can't come for whatever reason. So for the next week, we've got enough programs to roll out business as usual. And we're hoping that gives us a little bit of breathing room over the next week to work with individuals to come up. So we literally, there'll be a lot more work on staff, because we do need to now actually talk to every single group and go, okay, what is your strategy? How are you going to make this happen? If you don't have anyone with the capability to do it, how can we work with you to make it happen as well? We want to keep our groups broadcasting. I mean, the impact, we've got our radiothon scheduled for the last week in April, and our membership drive obviously is May, June. So some of the feedback we've had from broadcasters is, they struggle to keep members as it is and subscribers. So this is going to have a big effect if they can't be there to answer the phone or, respond to their listeners. So it's going to have an effect.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's been discussed is to not shy away from the radiothon. In actual fact, see it as an opportunity. It's a really good opportunity to try to raise funds and need to change the whole messaging. There were discussions around how to do that. So Wildlife Victoria, for example, we share a space with them. They've gone completely remote now, and they're receiving funding all the time for what happened with the bushfires. So they're still handling that situation remotely and all their calls remotely. So we probably need to think of the system and how to do that. So that's something we need to think about. If we can put on the list how to raise money, Mikaela, if we can, how to raise money for the radiothon, what messages do we need to be putting out? How do we physically have a radiothon?
Yeah, and CBAA have sent through, I just got an email before because I went to the deep dive session, remotely Monday, Tuesday. They've just sent through some resources, I think, that that could be shared on that as well. But yeah, it means we've got to think outside the box. So I think, the silver lining in all of this is it probably is forcing us to be a little bit more current in terms of online strategies and and flexible in terms of our business model and how we can operate. Which will only make us stronger in the future, but we've just got to get through the next week, really. I think from our end, like this is huge changes very quickly, and for us, I guess the fallout will come in the next 7 to 10 days, as we work with everyone to see how this is gonna roll out.
Yeah, so for all those people that are just, I think, come on maybe a bit later, we have this, if you want to, you don't just need to type in. If you want to put up your hand or type in you'd like to speak, then we can open it up and you can be part of the conversation and not just typing, but tell us about your experience.
Yeah. At the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand, little hand icon. If you press on that, it shows up.
Yep. And I can see Leo Rankins there. He's probably got something to say about what's happening in his station for a regional area, which would be good. And Annette from Cairns. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just click that and you can speak for a bit and let us know what's happening at your station. So the other thing about content then, it brings in the discussion longer term, the next 2 or 3 weeks. If programs aren't able to have content or they can't produce or they start dropping off, then we want to make sure they're still relevant, they're still on air. Then there's the idea of syndication. So this is, something which is not allowed amongst the community broadcasting to share programs across different radio stations. But the conversations have been had with ACMA about this and they're allowing for some flexibility. So there could be a role to play for the NBC, and certainly when you produce your community service announcements, Joe, we'll put them up on our website and promote them. And we can also do the similar thing with programs that if there's the Arabic programs and some of the programs can't go on air or they start to drop off, then we can look at producing an Arabic program that's really talking about what's happening with coronavirus and start syndicating that across different radio stations. So we can act like a sort of a news agent. A news agency where we start to have, different languages, 10, 15 different languages, doing regular reporting about updates about what's happening with the coronavirus, then syndicating that across stations and potentially on the CRN network as well, so that we keep up to date, we keep relevant, and we keep the stations on air with good content, good quality content. So that's another option in 1 or 2 weeks we start looking at.
Yeah, there's a question there from Annette about how we access content in language about COVID-19. I've just put in a web link there, Refugee Health Network Queensland.gov.au. They're a great resource. They have got a bunch of links on that page, including there's a coronavirus multilingual resource library that Ethnolink have done, which has 18 different, information in 18 languages from health authorities at federal, state and global levels. There's also some stuff on the Settlement Council of Australia website, and then the Australian Red Cross coronavirus stuff as well. So there's a bunch of existing sources of in-language resources. And as I said, we'll do a bunch of community notices, which is generic with generic website information or a phone number that people can call if they're not online, that we'll also provide hopefully by Monday, I'd say that'll be done. It's a big job.
And so there's also to get information and to keep up to date. We thought of starting a Facebook group to have discussions. We won't do that just now because the CBAA has one, and we're probably all better off just aiming at that. So if you go to the CBAA website, you'll find the link to that group. It's growing 100 every day, so there's a lot of technical people there, discussion there. I think it's better if we communicate through that, and if it gets too much information, then we can then focus on just the ethnic broadcasters communicating with each other. But we can try to put this sort of information up our website as well as send out e-news to people around, that Refugee Health Network email, that out to everybody so they can start to get resources, because content is a difficult one, I think, because things are just moving so quickly. Keeping up with it all. You could always do the basic stuff of the hand washing, but as things start to develop over the next months, then you need to be able to be providing correct information. And we should say it's really important to be, broadcasting reliable information, not sensational information, but certainly not downplay what's happening as well, because it is quite serious. And, I think people need to know the seriousness of it. Some people, I don't think, still get the picture. So we need to make that clear to everybody.
It's kind of hard to get your head around the whole thing. But we've got a duty of care as station managers that, and we really need to take that seriously, I think.
Yeah. And like I was just saying at the beginning, if people missed it, but I've just got out of 4 days of lockdown. I was in quarantine. So one of my family members a week and a half ago happened to be in a cafe, and there was only 20 people in Victoria at that time who were diagnosed with the coronavirus in a social setting. So one of my family members two of my family members were in that cafe, and they were reporting it in the newspaper. It's reported where cases were happening, and we happened to read the newspaper that Saturday and found out in the cafe. So we were diagnosed with a not direct contamination, but a casual connection. So, but then it changed that casual connections need to be tested. So my 5-year-old boy got sick on the Sunday night, and so we went into lockdown and quarantine for 4 days. And I think there's a role there to really play in getting on the phone and talking to people that are in that situation.
Yeah.
I found it very interesting because you think, oh yeah, it's just going to be 3 or 4 days, but it's not like a weekend, not like a long weekend. You literally can't go outside, you can't open the door. So you start to get a bit of cabin fever, and the kids want to do things, and they love you being home, but they're all over you all the time. So, and you really need to schedule the day, I found out. So do the things that happen in their life. So at school, they have exploration tables. So you do the same thing that's happening in their schools or their kindergarten, and you start to replicate what they're doing and follow that same sort of pattern. So we had a schedule right out. Okay, in the morning we're going to do this, you're going to do piano practice, we're going to do trampoline, we're going to jump on daddy, we're going to run outside, we're going to do exercise, we need to do gym. So it was really scheduled the whole day, and they loved the schedule. And playing around with that. You cook biscuits at a certain time. So they're talking to people about what they're doing as content as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great content, actually, to do some phone interviews with people. I think the other thing that you raised in that's really important is the social isolation of our elderly people in the community already is a big issue, and which is why, having programs and language and being able to ring up the radio station is really important, and it's something that we're not going to be able to sustain. But also, a lot of our broadcasters are older people who are retired, who this is their social interaction every week. They come in here and they have a cup of tea, and they have a yarn to a few other people, and then they get up and they do their program, and then they go home. And I think that reaching out and looking after each other is really important at this time. So, because we're about to add to that social isolation massively. But better to be isolated for a couple of months than not here, would be my opinion on that one.
So look, I just wonder if people have got other questions or particular items that they really
Yeah,
would like to
I've
address?
just noticed here Leo has got his hand raised, so I'm just going to pop Leo allowed to talk. All right, Leo, you should see a little unmute button there if you want to unmute your microphone.
Yep, is that working?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great.
Sorry, I've got the wrong computer for my camera. We're going to limited broadcasting. We're not calling it a shutdown for obvious reasons, because people first of all think you're shutting down. But we're going to a 9 to 11 only broadcast, and the reason we did that is because we still want to be able to broadcast important messages, and so 9 to 11 a.m. each morning we'll be broadcasting. But we did a quick. This is starting on Monday, and I did a quick number of people through the studio calculation. This is what prompted me to go ahead with this. And we had 320 people in our studios in 1 week, which is an enormous amount of people when you think about it, that could then go on and spread and so and so and so and so. And, you know, obviously using the same microphones and thing, we're at a what I would call pretty risky thing. So our board met via Zoom to discuss this, and we decided that we would shut down. But we are encouraging people to, if they have any, this is why we're staying from the 9 to 11 a.m. time slot, if they have anything that needs to be broadcast, they can always call into those programs from 9 to 11. And we're giving those presenters, each presenter who comes in for the 9 to 11 slot, they're going to take home their own mic socks and wash them. So we're giving them all microphones. And we're doing this for 3 weeks, and we're encouraging people who do have any information that they need to get out to their communities to ring in that 9 to 11 a.m. time slot. And the rest of the time we'll be playing music and asking people to send in music that's thing. And we did talk about a 6 o'clock sing-along at night time, and we're just waiting for people to get back to us on that, whether they would like to include a sing-along. So it could be from any cultural group or from any language program, and if they want to include a sing-along, we'll try and connect them up via Zoom or via Skype, and encourage people to not to sing along and not to forget, you know, that we're all important broadcasters, particularly for those communities. And like Joe said before about the social isolation, a lot of our members too, it's their big outing for the week, and without it, it is a big thing for them, and also for their communities, because there's a lot of people who aren't, you know, well enough to go anywhere, even to their community groups, to discuss things. So it is for those people at home who are isolated as well. It's a very important part of their lives, and we don't want to, you know, take that away from them more than anything else, especially in this time of need. But I think, as Joe said before, we do have a responsibility, which is to make sure that we're doing our bit. And also, as I said, the large numbers of people that come in from enormous amount of backgrounds. And we've already had someone who recently returned from China who's doing a 2-week, you know, self-isolation. But we can't have that amount of guests come through a radio program, come through a studio, a confined space like that for, you know, the next 3 weeks, because it's not only probably irresponsible, but it also sets a bar that, you know, like we share an office, the ABC share an office with us, and they went out last week, so they're only having one person come in whenever they have to do anything. And I think it's good that they've done that to show that, you know, this is what most people are going to have to do, because if we don't, it's going to spread more rapidly than we can. And I'm fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, to have a wife who works in infectious diseases, and the things that the briefs she gets, and particularly the one that came from England overnight, is that we have to do something that's going to make a difference, because if we don't, you know, we're going to find ourselves overwhelmed, and then all those people who are socially isolated and those people who have lesser health issues are going to be the ones that bear the brunt of this. And it wouldn't be a good time to, you know, want to have a heart attack or require a bed in a hospital when it's going to be full of people who have got a disease which we could have prevented.
Yeah.
So Leah, would your station benefit from syndicated programs if you were to try to put together programs that you could play?
Yeah, it would, but we have an issue also because we have sponsors, and those sponsors we want to keep. That's why we're doing 2-hour music programs and the other thing. And those sponsors, we want to keep playing their announcements. And the reason we want to do that is because we can't just shut them down because they've been with us for a long time. And we want to show that, you know, we know that they're probably going through a tough time as well. And if we shut those down, we're going to be, you know, seen as soon as the coronavirus came along, they just dumped us, which we don't want to do. So the syndicated programming would be good, but it would require a bit more effort. And as we said, we still want to put our station announcements in there. And there's also, like Joe was saying before, this requires a lot of work to do all this kind of stuff. And there's not many of us here. So it will fall on us working pretty, you know, flat out to try and keep just that, keep that time slot going, and all the other music programs that we put on as well.
That's one thing that we had to be careful of if we syndicate, is we can't take sponsorship on the syndicated program. It has to just be a program with no sponsorship, because that's against then the ACMA regulations. So we'd have to do syndicated programs. You know, if there was a Dinka program in Melbourne that was wanting to produce a Dinka program, then you've got a Dinka program, I think, and so you could replay a generalised Dinka program.
Yeah. Ours is New A, but anyway.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. But as I said, that then gives the issue. You know, it then, like you say, with that issue of the syndication and then putting our station announcements in it, or our sponsors' announcements in it, would, you know, breach that. So we're very careful of wanting to. That's why we want to have those music programs, so we can put our own programming in.
You could put either side of a syndicated program. If there was a 20-minute program produced, you could put either side local sponsorship program within that. Surely.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. Surely you could, but then that would require someone sitting there waiting for the program to finish, and then put in the announcements, and then go to the next program.
Yeah.
Whereas what we're talking about is people are pre-recording from home their programs, and they're sending them to via Dropbox or via Google or dropping on a USB if they can, and then we're going to put the announcements in to make a playlist for that to keep going. Because the other way would require too much time and effort for people, and there's not many of us here. There's only 2 of us here who could do that, so it would require too much time and effort.
So again, you would benefit from an extra technical person.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Grants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
And I think probably one of the other big issues for a lot of stations is going to be, sponsorship announcements. So, for example, we do the football, you know, which is a big income source for us. And as there's not going to be any football going along, we can't do any football broadcasts. So we don't know how that's going to go. Which will probably happen with a lot of other regional stations, because I know it's very popular more in the regional stations, and that supports, you know, that's the big supporter of the station. So that's going to be one of the issues we're going to have to face and talk about as we go further down the line. But it's quite a big issue to see, like particularly with CBF funding. I don't know how that's going to work, but it's going to be a big issue for people who are wanting to do their programs and us not having the resources to be able to provide them to do it.
Yeah, and we spoke before about asking the CBF if they could sort of redirect some of the funding that you've received already into more immediate issues that you need to be spending on, and allowing flexibility for that. There is discussion with the CBF around that, so hopefully that can come out a bit as a statement and a bit more clear ideas for stations to be able to move with that flexibility. Surely it's possible. Yeah.
I can't see why it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And there's Annette from Cairns as well. I see that she's just got back from New Zealand in self-isolation. So Annette, you don't have any reports of what's happening up in Cairns? What's going on up there? I'll put you on the spot maybe. I don't feel like you need to jump in, but got anything to add? Or anybody else from a station?
I think CMTO need to give her a permission to talk.
Yeah, I've just popped Annette up the top. So if you want to unmute your mic, Annette, we can hear about your story.
Yeah. No, I found out when I had to come back. I had to cut my trip short in New Zealand when the Australian government announced the new regulation on Sunday. I was flown back on Monday. And I've been talking with the station. There was a meeting last night, but I wasn't at the meeting, and I'm waiting to hear what's happening. We were looking at a plan at what's going to happen. So I can't really report on that at this stage. But we are looking at getting presenters to send in their programs. Quite a few of our presenters prepare their program ahead anyway. They pre-record, and some of them do it at home already. But we have the issue of some presenters who are not very technologically aware. So we are dealing with those. I know Peter, our manager, is speaking with them this week. So that's all I can say from Cairns FM 89.1.
And then Charitha, I see you're there from Mountain District Radio. Do you want to give us a report what's happening in Mountain District Radio? So while we're waiting for that to see, so as I said, we want to roll out some training on, over the next week or weeks as we progress through. And I think we've had the ideal one, of course, is remote broadcasting and how to produce your program at home. And the CMTO will be organising, and we'll be working with the CMTO to publish that to our members. They'll be organising next Thursday a webinar on this. Mikaela, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, no worries. So as Russell just said, we are planning to have a webinar next week. So it'll be Thursday, 26th of March at 2 p.m, 2 to 3. And what we're doing is we're discussing recording remotely, so recording your show remotely, producing your shows, and we're partnering up with NEMBC, SIN, as well as CRN and CBAA. So there's plenty of advice in the room, and I'll just pop this link. So we have actually a link now to register as well, so I'll pop that in the chat. And we have an article going up tomorrow as well. So it'll just be more in depth from our article, and also provide support, so names of people you can contact if you do need help with resources for recording at home. If you want to contact us in terms of getting editing software, things like that, we'll also be able to help out. But hopefully next week will give everyone a bit more insight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think information about the radioathon was another one that how to hold a radioathon with the messages, changing the messages, and also technically what's the best way to hold a radioathon. Might be another good webinar to look at.
Yeah, I think that's excellent, and I'll definitely put that down. We're actually working to put together a stream of COVID-19 response webinars. So we've been hard at work this week trying to rearrange our courses and set up some webinars to get everyone as much information as we can. So stay tuned.
And I think a job for the NEMBC is to look at content. So I didn't know about that website, Joe, that you just provided, but I think we need to look at websites that are giving good content. Of course, there's a federal government website, but I recommend you go to your local state health department website to get the information, because things can be slightly different. I don't know if Queensland's in a state of emergency yet, but the New South Wales state of emergency is slightly different than the Victorian state of emergency. Like in Victoria, once you do self-isolation, you're not allowed to leave the home. New South Wales, they can say you can go for a jog or something, just to get some fresh air. So there's slightly different bits of information. So it might be best going for your local state health department to get accurate information. They also have it in language as well. I'll I'll put up, I'll send on our email list some content email websites, and there's also one with different bits of information which you could read out on your programming language. But again, I think that'll be fairly generic information. So does anybody else identify anything that they need to, is important to follow up with in regards to the next conversation we have, the next webinar, or further any information they'd like to know about?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if this information's forthcoming yet, I know CBAA and CBF are probably looking at it, is the stimulus packages and the relief packages that governments are handing out, where the community radio has eligibility in any of those spaces to get some support beyond what we're asking CBF to look at.
Yeah, and I think the CBAA is doing a lot in that area, the stimulus packages, and I think there will be another stimulus package, and I think that's probably where the community broadcasting sector needs to get behind that one. And similarly with the $30 million that was released for advertising, I think that's been released and it's been targeted. So I think we're a little bit behind and need to move forward for the next advertising package, the next stimulus package, and where we need to be going in that direction. CBAA is talking to government. They're having meetings with them around releasing funding to identify community radio needs. So that is happening, but there's nothing definite yet, but we certainly need to step that up and see what we could be doing in filling gaps that are not there. And it's usually the community broadcasting sector is sort of lower down when it comes to commercial or ABC or even SBS pick up a lot on this first. The $30 million that were released for advertising, I don't think that any of that's going to community radio. I'm not absolutely sure on that yet. I need to do some research on that, but there was a company called Carbon Creative that produced it in
Carbon Media.
Yeah, Carbon Media, and they've now started a social media campaign to get that information out before they hit the airwaves or the print. So yeah, I need to find out what that is and find out if we can be part of that, or is it too late, or do we wait for the next rollout of promotional material from government? But we certainly need to be in there, that's for sure.
I don't know if you can hear me still, but surely we must have some kind of case that we are getting into the communities that the other advertising isn't to, via language. Surely there's got to be some kind of case we can run to say that those communities that are broadcasting in language obviously got people who don't understand English, and that's probably an area that they need to advertise in.
So there's been quite a few conversations about this. So the bigger conversation is that mainstream media get all the advertising money and no money comes to the community sector from government. That's well and truly on the agenda. I know from the deep dive session that there's quite a little bit of lobbying going on. I personally have spoken to 2 senators this week, as well as our multicultural minister here in Queensland, and asked that that issue be escalated up the chain, because obviously you've got all the Premier and the Prime Minister meeting regularly now around this. So that was being escalated up as a key issue from a number of different angles. And from what I understand is Labor will be getting we've spoken to them today, that they will be getting a chunk of stuff that comes through in the next couple of weeks that will come out of that process. Because, yeah, it's critical. We're talking 20% of the population that need to hear the message as much as everyone else does. So,
yeah, and we're trying. So Nick Demetoko did speak to Queensland Senator, who has passed that information on to the Minister of Communications. So we're putting together a brief which will be forwarded to Nick, to the Senator, to go directly to the Minister of Communications. Also working with an agency we have to help us with lobbying. So they'll get a brief from us, and they'll be seeing where in their meetings if they could push that forward as well. So yeah, and you're right, Leah. We've got a very good case, and we just need to prosecute that case effectively,
especially from a public health perspective as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the issue around isolation was an interesting one tonight, is that a lot of our broadcasters will be in that isolation, and how they can communicate that information to their communities.
Well, Diversitat runs a aged care support service where people come in, and that's their thing for the week. But they'll be all going virtually. Because that's shut down. But all those people will be going into social isolation, and because language difficulties, there's really nothing else for them.
What I've found is that it's that Joe was able to get some connection with the Queensland government and get connected with these 52 community service announcements that will be produced, which is really good. Adelaide has also connected locally with their state government, and it seems like the full-time ethnic stations and stations that in regional areas already have connections with their local politicians. It's a much more personal, easier way to connect. It's harder for us to get to the federal government now, to the Ministry of Communications, because they're all in lockdown and it's very difficult. So going through that local politicians is a really good way to talk to them, and then hopefully that filters up or get them to send messages upwards to the Ministry of Communications for that need. That would certainly help us if it's being communicated from the grassroots up.
Could we have a standard letter then about that? Because I'm very willing to send it to all our local politicians. If we could have a standard letter that could go out to the stations, okay. That would be really good for people to then be able to send it on to their local politicians.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. I'll do that. That's a good one. Yes.
And then we're all sending the same message as well.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. Good idea.
Someone else got a hand up. Oh no, that's Leo.
Oh, sorry, I'll put the hand down. No, I'm down now.
Okay. All right. So we're coming to the end of the time. If anybody needs to add anything, say anything, there's some really good outcomes from this. Standard letter is a really good one. I'll work on that tonight and get that by tomorrow to people. Any other issues that we need to raise? And we'll do this again. Certainly, it's good just to connect with people and see what's happening with their station.
How about an NEMBC sing-along? 6 o'clock each night. Russell, I'm sure you could lead that.
Hell.
2 and 1, of course.
How do you have a sing-along? How does everybody sing along? Where do they get together to sing?
Wherever you are. So you can just open your windows and sing out, or you can sing on Zoom. You can sing wherever you want.
Oh, okay. From the balconies.
Yes, through your balconies.
Love it.
Okay. I'll have to think about that.
On that note.
On that note.
On that note. Thanks, Leo.
Okay, and nobody else is picking up on anything. Mikaela, do you need to say anything to finish off before we finish off?
Yeah, no, I might just add, so we have a number of ethnic stations still ready to deliver training, and so the CMTO have come up with a bit of a solution. We've been thinking on our feet a little bit this week, and we're wanting to offer training to the stations who still have it allocated, but we can run the courses online. So we're getting our wonderful trainers to adapt the resources so they are online, available for online courses, and we're going to be delivering 4-hour sessions, and everyone can access them from the comfort of their own home. So if you still have training to be run at the station, or I wanted to inquire about having training run for the station, maybe it could be anything from management to broadcasting, maybe helping out during this time. We are happy to run it online and are working really hard to get all these courses up and running for everyone.
Thanks, Kayla.
No worries at all.
Will you be running any particular coronavirus issue ones for a station? Like
that is in the works. So we're actually trying to work through, you know, like an emergency course where, like a what if course, what happens in these circumstances. So we're trying to put everything together one step at a time. Awesome. Okay, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, anybody with any more questions, put their hand up. Any more text?
Sorry, Ross, just one. The football's still going ahead, is it, for you guys?
Yeah, so we produced the TV program on Monday night. We've putting out the half an hour English program. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a fall down on the 7 language programs, but we will do that next week as long as the football's on. So the AFL is on this weekend. I think, is it on today? Game? I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't follow the AFL enough to know, but but it's on with no crowd. The AFL position is that it'll go ahead this weekend, and next weekend they don't know. So if there's no AFL games, of course we're off. So we'll have to wait and see, and also what happens to the stations as well. What happens to Channel 31? Are they staying on air or not? What other programs are staying on air as well? But as long as the AFL is going, then having shows, then we'll keep producing them. And if it's not TV, we'll go back to just doing the radio. But as long as the AFL games are on, they'll be there. But I can't imagine that they'll keep playing for some reason. Just my personal view, I can't imagine that if the players are playing and one of them gets a coronavirus, those 2 clubs will be out. And that's a big risk for the AFL. So we'll have to see what happens there next week.
As long as it doesn't interfere with your sing-along, we'll be right.
Fantastic. So I might just add as well, we have a question from Robert. Would love to access the training. Please let me know how to connect. I'm just going to add my email in the chat box here. If you want to connect in regards to training and what can be offered at your station, I'm just putting my email there, and feel free to reach out and I'll respond as soon as I can. And I'll also be popping this webinar up on our YouTube and then onto the CMTO website. So if anyone wants to rewatch or share it out amongst your networks with any of the information, the great information shared by Joe, Leo, and Russell, if you wanted to take notes on that, if you didn't already have the opportunity, you can rewatch the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody needs to contact me anytime about anything, just do so. And Joe as well. That's fine. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Hang on.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
That's my email address down the bottom. Happy to talk to anyone. See ya.
See you later, everybody.
Bye-bye. See you, everybody.